Congressman Adam Kinzinger on the line. Congressman, good morning to you.
Dude, a 0% chance of rain. That's courageous to predict that.
Yeah, I know. We could get easily burned later on a pop-up, and, then I have to do the apology tour over this thing.
Yeah, that's right. How's the shotgunning of coffee grounds going for you?
Oh, man, I just cut myself a good slice a couple of minutes ago in your honor. So next time in your studio, we got the special fork and knife ready for some coffee.
I'm in.
Speaking of weather, I see the National Archives say the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and all that stuff safe after all that flooding in D.C.
Yeah, I actually came in right after that. It's weird. So I actually like bad weather. Obviously, I don't like if it does any damage, but I like looking at tornadoes, crazy thunderstorms, and I always miss it. So in D.C., by the time I leave or when I come in, all the bad weather will have happened, and the same in Illinois. The big storms hit my house when I'm not there. So I don't know. Maybe God's protecting me, but I also wish he'd give me a little view because I like seeing that.
Oh, he'll pay you back with some heavy-duty snow shoveling when you're in your 60s at some point.
I could do without that.
Hey, speaking of totally off Congress and everything else that's going on in the world, congratulations on your engagement.
Yeah, so thank you. And obviously, I found somebody that is eyesight impaired,
and very, very tolerant.
That's right. And no, she's a wonderful lady. She works for Vice President Pence. Her name's Sophia. And I'm just honored. We've been dating for over a year, and you kind of hit that point of why are we just keeping dating? So I proposed to her, and looking forward to a life together. I'm excited.
Outstanding. Well, my wife and I just celebrated our 28th at the end of last month. So anything I can help you out with, feel free, ring me day or night on this one.
Yeah, no kidding. I'll be about 100 when I hit that though.
Well, you're a healthy guy. I'm sure you're going to hit that. Lots of stuff to talk about this morning, including one thing I wanted to get your take on: this virtual war that's broken out in the House of Representatives, all among one side.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Okay, so this is like a times 3 or 5 version of, remember all back during kind of 2011 to about 2015, the House Republicans were at war with ourselves a little bit. It'd be like, well, this isn't conservative enough, or this is too, all that kind of stuff. This is like that, except the difference is our arguments in the House Republicans were more, we all agreed with the same thing. It's just kind of the tactics to get to the same end goal. This is the old Democratic Party, your dad's Democratic Party, there's a few of those people left, versus, your dad's Communist Party. And it is two totally different parties, two very different worldviews in one party. And this is what happens when you just have a coalition of people that have very different views just for, together for power. And they can't even pass their own bills in the House. They are arguing about, AOC now wants to eliminate the Department of Homeland Security.
Right.
She obviously wants to get rid of ICE. They'd love to open the borders. And there are still a few Democrats left. And frankly, to Nancy Pelosi's credit, as much as I'm not a huge fan of hers, she's sitting there going, goodness, we gotta be more moderate. And her far left wing is just tearing her open. It's pretty crazy to watch.
Yeah, you've got this shooting match on Twitter. You've got you got a race card being played by AOC against Nancy Pelosi.
I just saw that this morning. She's like, she's going after women of color. Well, no, Nancy's going after the people that are destroying their agenda. And I'll say this: I want a healthy Democratic Party, right? Now it's nice to see them get a taste of their own medicine and not be able to pass anything, which is great. But, in the long run, I want a Democratic Party that's healthy and, and that competes with a more in-power Republican Party. But this is a mess. And frankly, I think their party is going to really squander any opportunity they have in 2020.
Yeah, because you are seeing shots being fired across the bow. Everybody seemingly is firing at everyone, and Republicans are just kind of stepping to the side.
Yeah, it's the old saying: when your enemy is destroying itself, just step back and watch.
let them duke it out. Well, yeah, this is the kind of stuff you get some popcorn and then you grab the latest news report on what's happening in the House, and this is the kind of stuff you're reading.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's incredible when AOC won't even meet with Nancy Pelosi, but she's happy to go on the press and do it on Twitter.
Sure, yeah, because that's the new modern American politics right there.
It is.
On a global look, Ben, this deal in the Strait of Hormuz yesterday with the Iranians trying to seize a British oil tanker only to be foiled by an accompanying frigate. This is big news.
It is. And so just a little backstory, the Brits, in a very courageous and frankly wise move, seized an oil tanker off the Straits of Gibraltar because they knew it was carrying bootlegged Iranian oil. And that's a huge hit to Iran. Obviously, Iran is in a very desperate situation right now because the sanctions and pulling out of the nuclear deal for us has done a great deal of damage to them, which is the wise move to do. And so they're lashing out, and they said that they were going to retaliate against Britain, against the UK, and so they attempted to board and take over a UK oil tanker, and, of course, the UK Navy stepped in and said, we're going to blow you out of the water if you do that. I think the bottom line is this. Iran is going to continue to push till they get pushed back, and I actually do have a more increased fear that there will be some kinetic action taken by us against them at some point, because I don't think they're going to stop till they get slapped in the face. And, I'm not advocating for out of the blue doing it now, but I think we have to be ready and prepared. And it doesn't mean World War III. We have to understand that we can take out things that the Iran is using to do bad stuff and then not necessarily expand into a bigger war.
And now we're seeing, of course, the Iranians are proudly claiming that, we're going to take our enrichment above and beyond what the former quote-unquote deal was that we had with them. And, of course, we should have left that deal in place with Iran that we had. Look, they were going to do all of these things anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is a great example of, so keep in mind, just in a few years, this deal would begin to sunset already. And it would start to, over the next 10 years, basically open up their ability to do this anyway. So if you see how quickly they're going to 20% enrichment and going past the stockpile and bringing centrifuges online, that's exactly what would have happened in 10 years. The difference is, in 10 years, they would have legally been out of the sunset, been out of the constraints of this deal, whereas now they're showing what they would have done, but they still have, the constraints of the deal unless they pull out, which is going to bring Europe on board. So this actually, to me, is proof that the deal was a bad deal, because it shows what they wanted to do anyway and what they're capable of doing when this deal would have legally expired, and they would have been able to go to the UN and say, look, we lived under the deal and the deal expired, now we can do what we want.
Right. So they've just kind of basically speeded up the timetable.
They've sped it up, and they've looked at, and now, though, the difference is, Europe can come on our side eventually because they realize what they've done. Whereas had this deal actually lived all the way through its life, you and I would still be fairly young men when that happened. Now they could go to Europe and say, hey, we did everything you wanted. And, of course, Europe would say, yeah, that's a fair point. And Iran would have nukes. And the same goal, which is to take over the Middle East and the world ultimately.
Yeah, which, all things considered, we would like to avoid because it just seems like it wouldn't be done very well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I wouldn't want, an assistant Ayatollah running the U.S., but that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, I tend to be on your side on that one. Tell me a little bit about the fair drug pricing. There's been a lot of talk about that, but it's been buried by other events that are going on.
Yeah, so bottom line is without getting into too much of the technicality, there is basically a way that drug companies were able to build subsidiaries, and they did this legally, and in essence have a different drug price through the subsidiary and increase their reimbursement from Medicaid in that process. And it's actually been a big loophole that, again, these companies were using legally, and this would close it. This would create a fair process for, in essence, basically them to come back with a legitimate cost to the government, a legitimate reimbursement, saves the government money, and is way better for consumers. So these kinds of little things, which actually are pretty big, that's actually happening, is not getting a lot of attention from the media, of course, but is actually doing a lot to increase, drug transparency, to decrease drug prices, and to increase our healthcare system. And we've seen, in fact, I think it was last year was the first time we saw prescription drug prices go down in the aggregate. So there's a lot of bipartisan support for this stuff, and I really commend Secretary of H for tackling this issue.
And when you say bipartisan, I'm looking at a piece right here talking about you and Congressman Joe Kennedy applauding the passage.
That's right. So I like Kennedy a lot personally. Obviously, politically we disagree, but we talked about doing this and passed this thing pretty quickly through the House, and we think it'll get through the Senate and be law and save the taxpayers a lot of money and actually be way better for end user consumers.